This story is titled, My Parents Compared Me to Their Golden Child Brother with His Successful Business, Not Really, while calling me just a mechanic, so I silently packed my things and left. The next morning, my phone was flooded with calls from all family members. Hey Reddit, I'm 31 years old and work as an HVAC technician. It's not the most glamorous career, but I make decent money fixing AC units for a living. The job involves long hours crawling through dusty attics and freezing basements, but it pays the bills and I've developed a solid skill set that's always in demand. My family situation, though, that's completely messed up. My younger brother Lucas, who's 27, has always been the golden child in our family. Always. Since we were kids, my parents have thought the sun shines out of his ass. He's got that perfect hair, those tech startup vibes, and a way of talking that makes my parents hang on his every word. Me? I'm just there. The backup kid. The afterthought. I still remember when I was 10 and Lucas was only 6. We both wanted this new video game system that had just come out. I had been doing chores for months, saving every penny I could get my hands on. Then one day, Lucas walks in, fake cries to mom about some kid at school bragging about getting the same system. The very next day, there was a brand new console sitting in his room. When I asked about mine, Dad just patted me on the shoulder and said, "Maybe save up a bit more, sport." Behind their backs, Lucas shot me this smug little smile. Even at 6, that little shit knew exactly what he was doing. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. In high school, I needed $50 for a science field trip. Dad gave me this whole lecture about financial responsibility and made me mow lawns to earn it. That same week, Lucas casually mentioned wanting a new laptop for his projects, and they bought him a $1,200 MacBook without asking a single question. When I pointed out this obvious double standard, Mom just said, "Lucas is using it for his future. Your field trip is just for fun." Yeah, it was a science museum, educational and directly related to my classes, but whatever. My buddy Tom at work gets it. We were grabbing tacos yesterday after fixing this nightmare of a commercial system at a law firm. We had spent 8 hours on diagnostics, only to discover the problem was a dead squirrel in the ductwork. The lawyers had been freaking out because their precious filing room was 82 degrees Fahrenheit. While Tom was showing me pictures of the poor, crispy squirrel, I got yet another text from Mom about Lucas's latest achievement. "Dude," Tom said, shoving half a burrito in his mouth, "your family's more toxic than that black mold we found at the Henderson job." He's not wrong. Speaking of jobs, last week I got called to this fancy house in the suburbs. The lady was complaining that her AC was making a screaming noise. I'm thinking it's probably a bearing issue, maybe a belt problem. Standard stuff we see all the time. Nope. Turns out she'd been using her return vent as a mail slot. There were 3 months' worth of bills, catalogs, and coupons just sitting in there, blocking all airflow. I charged her the standard rate plus what Tom likes to call the people are idiots tax. Family dinners have become basically torture for me. Lucas goes on and on about his latest promotion, his business trips, and all that. He's always talking about some app that's supposedly revolutionizing the industry, or whatever that means. Mom hangs on every word like he's Jesus himself descending from heaven to bless our dinner table. Dad just sits there nodding, this proud grin plastered on his face. He's probably already spending Lucas's imaginary millions in his head. Then there's me. Whenever I try to talk about my day or something interesting that happened at work, Dad cuts me off with some variation of, "So Nathan, graduated to changing filters yet?" Cue the laugh track. Mom's fake little giggle, Lucas's smug chuckle, and Dad's full belly laugh. Message received loud and clear. Nathan the HVAC guy is the family joke. I remember my senior year of high school during career day. I mentioned being interested in HVAC because it seemed practical. Good money, always in demand, recession-proof. Dad laughed so hard he choked on his coffee and said, "Well, somebody's got to do it, I guess." Meanwhile, when Lucas, still in his freshman year, mentioned maybe getting into biotech startups, Dad immediately bought him all these business books, got him a new desktop computer, and started telling everyone his son was the next big thing. The contrast between how they treated our career aspirations couldn't have been clearer. "Must be real fulfilling," Lucas always adds during family dinners, "spending your days unclogging other people's AC units." Then he pauses for effect before adding, "Really changing the world there, bro." And just to twist the knife, he casually mentions his investment portfolio while Mom practically drools over him. I just sit there, force a smile, push food around my plate, and count the minutes until I can leave. Making a scene has never been my style, so I take their BS year after year, serving as the family punching bag. My apartment's nothing special. 1 bedroom with mismatched furniture and a fridge that makes weird noises. But it's mine. There's no judgment here, no comparisons to Golden Boy Lucas. The one time Lucas stopped by, he looked around like he was at a zoo exhibit. "Wow, Nathan, real cozy," he said, dragging out the word cozy like it was a disease. "This is what HVAC money gets you, huh?" Guess I'll keep working on my startup. Then he laughed and spent the next hour bragging about his downtown condo. I wanted to punch him in the throat, not going to lie. I've been seeing this girl, Olivia, who's 26 and works as a kindergarten teacher. We met when I was fixing the AC at her school. The principal had called in a panic, practically yelling, "The kids are melting," like it was life or death. Turned out to be just a tripped breaker, one of the easiest fixes in the business. While I was checking the system, this cute teacher kept popping in to see if it was fixed yet. "The kids are drawing pictures of what hell looks like," she told me, laughing. "It's getting dark in there." I liked her sense of humor right away and got her number before I left. We've been dating steadily since then. Olivia thinks it's hilarious when I tell her about my various jobs. Her favorite story is about the old lady who kept her thermostat at 64 degrees, but wore a parka inside and couldn't figure out why she was still cold. We've gotten pretty close over the past few months. Olivia met my family once. Big mistake. Lucas spent the whole night explaining tech stuff to her like she was 5 years old. See, the internet is a series of, "Shut up, dude." She teaches kids but isn't one herself. Afterwards, in the car, she was like, "Wow, your brother really loves the sound of his own voice, huh?" I knew she was a keeper right then and there. Lately, I've been noticing some weird things about Lucas's company. Nothing major at first, just little inconsistencies. His stories don't quite add up sometimes. He'll mention his team and how big it is, but then slip and say they're understaffed. Or he'll brag about their fancy office, but dodge when mom asks to visit. I've also started seeing articles online, tech blogs questioning their growth numbers, former employees leaving suspicious reviews on job sites. Tom thinks I'm overthinking it. "All startup guys are full of shit," he says with a shrug. Part of the job description. Maybe he's right, but something feels off about Lucas's situation. Last Christmas, Lucas gave everyone company swag. T-shirts, water bottles, all with his startup's logo plastered across them. Dad wore his shirt to the gym the very next day, already telling his buddies about his son's company that was about to blow up. Mom immediately put their sticker on her car. Me? I used the water bottle for work and it leaked everywhere on day one. Seemed fitting somehow. Yesterday, I was fixing an AC at this investment office downtown when I overheard these guys talking about overvalued startups and houses of cards waiting to collapse. One of them specifically mentioned Lucas's company, saying their numbers don't pass the smell test. I just kept working, pretending not to hear. But the conversation stuck with me. Maybe karma's finally knocking on Lucas's door, though guys like him always seem to land on their feet somehow. Last summer was absolutely brutal with a record heat wave. Every AC in town was working overtime, which meant I was too. I was pulling 60-hour weeks, crawling through attics hot enough to cook on, running on Monster Energy drinks and Spite. By Friday, I had this one client, a total Karen who insisted her AC wasn't cooling properly, despite the display clearly reading 68 degrees. I checked everything, and the system was working perfectly. Finally, I noticed she had blackout curtains and a space heater running in the corner. A space heater, during a heat wave. When I pointed it out, she goes, "Well, I get cold feet, but I like the room cool." I charged her the full diagnostic fee and left before I said something I'd regret. The worst job was this lawyer's office downtown. Their compressor kept shutting down, but there wasn't anything obviously wrong with it. I spent hours troubleshooting, going through every possible cause, until I finally found the issue. When I explained the problem and what needed to be done, the office manager had the audacity to ask if I could just make it work anyway, without the proper repairs. I wanted to say, "Yeah, I'll just violate the laws of thermodynamics for you. No problem." But I kept it professional. The last thing I wanted that week was another family dinner, but Mom kept blowing up my phone with texts saying, "Lucas has big news." Every single message had that exact phrase, all caps and everything. So I dragged my tired ass over to their house after my last job. I barely had time to shower before heading over. I walked in to find Lucas sprawled on the sofa, his designer jacket tossed beside him like it was nothing. That jacket probably cost more than my monthly rent. He barely looked up from his phone when I entered. "Hey Nathan, finally get promoted to thermostat installer yet?" he smirked. Mom did her nervous laugh from the kitchen, and Dad straight up chuckled like it was comedy gold. This kind of treatment started when we were kids. On my 16th birthday, all I wanted was tickets to see this band I was obsessed with. Instead, I got socks and a Walmart gift card. For Lucas's 16th birthday, Dad gave him the goddamn car. When I asked why there was such a difference in our gifts, Dad simply explained, "He's showing real potential," like I was too stupid to understand the real reason why they treated us so differently. I grabbed a drink and headed to the kitchen. Mom was making all of Lucas's favorites. Not a hot wing in sight, even though she knows I love them. "Classic Nathan, honey, you look tired," she said without actually looking at me. "Lucas has got big news today. Try to be happy for him, okay?" Sure, Lucas has news. What a shocker. Dinner started, and Lucas went on and on about his latest promotion. waving his fancy smartwatch around as he talked. CEO loved my proposal, he bragged. Youngest team lead ever, might get a corner office next month. Mom was practically orgasmic with pride. That's wonderful, sweetie, she exclaimed. Isn't that wonderful, honey? Dad nodded proudly and said, That's my boy. Always knew you'd make it big. So I decided to try my luck. Actually, I got promoted to senior technician last week, I said. There was an awkward pause. Dad barely looked up from his plate. Wow, Nathan, fixing slightly bigger air conditioners. What a milestone. Then they all laughed. Even Lucas with this fake sympathy look on his face. It made me want to flip the table. Hey, not everyone can develop apps, Lucas added with a condescending tone. Someone's got to do the grunt work, though. He wrinkled his nose slightly. Honestly, bro, you smell like you've been rolling around inside those dusty units all day. Ever heard of deodorant? I had a flashback to the previous week when I was stuck in an attic in 120-degree heat, fixing an evaporator coil while the homeowner kept yelling up, Is it fixed yet? My electric bill better not go up. Meanwhile, Lucas sits in air-conditioned comfort all day, probably browsing social media instead of working, but he's still the family success story. Mom tutted softly. Lucas, be nice. Nathan works with his hands. She said it like I cleaned toilets with them, in this tone that was somehow both condescending and what she probably thought was supportive. Yeah, Nathan's job is important, Dad said with a smirk that contradicted his words. Without him, who would we call when the AC breaks? He chuckled before adding, Though at the rates you guys charge, maybe you should be driving something better than that rusted truck. My truck is a 2012 F-150. It's not new, but it's reliable and paid off 3 years ago. Meanwhile, I know for a fact that Lucas's luxury apartment costs more than he makes. I saw him checking his banking app once. Negative balance. But sure, my truck is the problem. Something in me just snapped. It wasn't rage exactly, more like a quiet click. Like when you're trying to loosen a rusted bolt and it finally gives way. I put my fork down, stood up, and looked Lucas right in the eye. Enjoy your fantasy while it lasts, I said calmly. The truth always catches up. I turned to my father. And FYI, Dad, that rusted truck is paid for. Can't say that about all your fancy shit, can you? Dead silence fell over the table. Lucas's smug look slipped just for a second, revealing a flicker of genuine worry beneath. Then I walked out without another word. It was the first time I'd ever stood up to them. The look on their faces, worth every second of the awkward dinner. I got in my rusted truck and just sat there for a minute, processing what had just happened. My phone started blowing up immediately with texts and calls. I ignored them all and called Olivia instead. Hey, how'd it go? She asked when she picked up. Just walked out on family dinner, I told her, feeling a strange mix of guilt and liberation. Feels fucking amazing. About time, she laughed. Want to come over and tell me all about it? For the next few weeks, I buried myself in work. I took extra shifts and the toughest jobs I could find. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Mom left voicemails about my attitude problem and how I ruined dinner. I deleted them without listening. Dad texted once, Your mother is upset. Call her. Yeah, no. Tom was loving the overtime. His girlfriend was pregnant, so he was banking every hour he could get. We took on this massive strip mall job, 10 rooftop units, all neglected for years. We spent days climbing up and down ladders in 95-degree heat, finding everything from dead birds to a fully intact wasp nest the size of a basketball. Tom took a picture of me holding it with BBQ tongs and captioned it, Nathan's new family, less toxic than his real one. He sent it to Olivia, who made it her phone background. During this time, I hit a streak of weird customer issues. One guy insisted his AC was possessed because it turned on at random times. I simply showed him how his smart thermostat had a schedule function that he had accidentally activated. Easy fix, though the look of embarrassment on his face was priceless. But I also started noticing more weird stuff in local business news about Lucas's company. Employee complaints, financial issues, growth numbers that didn't add up. Nothing major at first, just little red flags here and there. A buddy from high school who works in tech sent me a link to this industry forum thread about overvalued startups to avoid. Lucas's company was number 3 on the list. The post mentioned high turnover, missed deadlines, and creative accounting. I thought about forwarding it to my parents, but decided against it. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I remember when Lucas was 14, and he borrowed Dad's credit card for some online game purchases. He racked up $800 in charges for virtual items and currency. I got blamed first because I was older and should have been watching him. When they finally figured out it was Lucas, he cried and said he didn't understand how online payments worked. They grounded him for a weekend. Just a weekend. When I was 14 and came home an hour past curfew, I lost car privileges for a month. Different rules always applied in our house. Olivia and I are getting pretty serious. She stays over most nights since her place has roommates and mine's quieter. One night, we were making dinner together when she asked about Lucas. I told her what I'd been seeing online about his company. "Sounds like a house of cards," she said, chopping vegetables with practiced precision. "People like that always crash eventually." Olivia's dad owns a plumbing business, so she gets the trades life and actually respects it. It's such a huge change from my family's attitude that sometimes I still find it hard to believe. Then boom, Tuesday morning I was checking my phone between jobs and there it was. Lucas's company had imploded overnight. The CEO and executives were under investigation for fraud, fake earnings reports, fake investment numbers, fake everything, and there was Lucas in a grainy picture, being escorted out of the building, jacket over his face, hiding from reporters. I'm not going to lie, part of me felt vindicated. After all those years of Lucas the genius and Nathan the disappointment, it turned out Golden Boy was nothing but spray paint all along. Later that day, my phone blew up with calls and texts from Mom, Dad, and Lucas. I ignored them all and finished my workday. The whole time I was working, they kept blowing up my notifications, but I found myself weirdly calm about the whole situation. That night, I finally checked my voicemails. It was a total panic fest. Mom was crying, Dad was demanding I call back, and Lucas sounded completely broken. It was weird how fast they remembered my number once they needed something. I called Dad the next morning. The conversation went exactly like you'd expect. He dropped the bomb that they had tied their entire future to Lucas. They had refinanced their paid-off house to invest in his startup. Dad had taken early retirement, thinking they'd be set for life on Lucas's imaginary millions. Now they were facing foreclosure and debt collectors, all because they bet everything on Golden Boy. When Dad asked for money, I laughed. I couldn't help it. I reminded him what HVAC guys make. The ones he's been mocking for years. Not enough to save their house, that's for sure. I remember when I was 17 and needed $2,000 for technical school application and supplies. Dad said they couldn't help because money was tight. I found out later they'd just given Lucas $5,000 for a business course that he quit after 2 weeks. But money was tight for my education somehow. Tom met me for lunch after I talked to Dad. I told him everything, and he just shook his head in disbelief. "Man, I thought my family was dysfunctional," he said, ordering an extra plate of wings. "Stress eating is mandatory in these situations," he explained as he dug in. Meanwhile, more details about Lucas's company kept emerging. Turns out they never had a real product, just fancy presentations and projections. Classic Silicon Valley vapor. Lucas had been a low-level developer, not a team lead. Everything was a lie. That weekend I was working this emergency call at a church. Their AC died right before Sunday service, and the pastor was in a panic about his congregation having to sit through worship in the sweltering heat. He kept saying the Lord works in mysterious ways, looking for some spiritual significance in their AC breakdown. "Yeah, buddy, so do 30-year-old condensers when they're not maintained," I muttered under my breath as I worked. While I was waiting for a part to arrive, I scrolled through my family's increasingly desperate messages. Mom tried guilt. "After all we've done for you." Dad tried demands. "This is what family is for." Lucas just begged. Classic roles, same as always. I blocked all their numbers. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Olivia gets it, though. Her brother was the golden child, too, though not to the extreme that Lucas was in my family. "Some families are toxic," she said as we cuddled on the couch that night. "Sometimes distance is the only healthy option." A month passed, and life settled into a new normal. Work, home, Olivia, repeat. It was peaceful without my family's constant judgment hanging over me. Things with Olivia were good. She was practically moved in at this point. Her kindergarten classroom stories somehow made my weird HVAC encounters seem normal. Last week, she had a kid who ate a crayon, then puked rainbow colors all over the reading corner. That story made my day of fixing a restaurant's walk-in freezer seem downright boring. Work kept me busy. I've got this regular client, an elderly lady who calls me every month convinced her system is broken. It never is. I think she just likes the company. She always has cookies ready and asks about Olivia. During my last visit, she tried setting me up with her granddaughter until I mentioned having a girlfriend. The disappointment on her face was priceless. I had a nightmare job at a gym where the owner kept quoting his cousin's friend, who supposedly knows HVAC, and questioned every part I said needed replacing. "Yeah, where's your cousin's friend now?" I wanted to ask as I balanced on a ladder trying to replace a heavy motor unit. I nearly dropped the 40 pounds motor on him while Tom made faces behind his back. I almost fell off the ladder laughing. Speaking of Tom, his girlfriend had their baby, a little girl. He started showing up to work with these massive bags under his eyes but couldn't stop smiling. He brings in daily photo updates like we're all dying to see his kid's slightly different facial expression each day. It's annoying but kind of sweet. The dude's happy. Olivia thinks we should get a dog. Her school had a therapy dog visit, and now she's got puppy fever. I keep telling her my apartment doesn't allow pets, but she's already researching pet-friendly housing online. We're moving fast, but it doesn't feel wrong. Then, without any warning, Lucas showed up on a Sunday morning. No text, no call, just there at my door. I almost didn't recognize him. The designer clothing was gone, same as the perfect hair and smug smile. This version of Lucas looked like wrinkled khakis, plain tee, dark circles under his eyes, stubble. He could have passed for a homeless guy if you didn't look too closely. I let him in against my better judgment. My place isn't fancy, but it's clean and paid for. Unlike wherever he's staying now, I bet. He paced around nervously before collapsing on my couch and launching into a whole confession. Lucas confessed that he was never as successful as he claimed. He'd started exaggerating years ago to impress mom and dad, and the lie just got bigger and bigger over time. He admitted he got caught up in the startup's fraud because he was desperate to make his lies real. Worst of all, he had convinced mom and dad to invest their retirement savings on promises he knew were BS. The irony hit me like a truck. All these years feeling worthless next to him, and he was just living in a fantasy world. It reminded me of what my first HVAC instructor told us. In this job, you can't fake it. A system either works or it doesn't. No amount of BS changes physics. I wished someone had told Lucas that about business. Then Lucas got to the real reason for his visit. He started going on about some NFT scheme he was convinced would fix everything. Apparently, mom and dad were already on board, investing what little they had left from their savings. Jesus Christ, I said, stunned. Are you seriously fixing things with another scam? It was unbelievable. After everything that had happened, they were still following Lucas off another cliff. It reminded me of that time in high school when Lucas convinced Dad to invest in his friend's revolutionary car detailing business. Dad lost $5,000, but somehow it wasn't Lucas's fault because he was showing entrepreneurial spirit. I told Lucas exactly how stupid this sounded. He left with his shoulders slumped, this defeated version of my brother so different from the one I grew up with. I called my parents that night, trying to talk some sense into them. Mom confirmed they were betting what little they had left on Lucas's new opportunity. Of course they were. They'd never learn. Olivia watched me pace around the apartment after the call. She pointed out that I can't save people who don't want saving. Your parents are adults making their own choices, she said gently. Bad ones, but still their choices. She was right, but it still bothered me. Not because I cared about their money, but because the pattern was so frustratingly familiar. Lucas screws up, they enable him, repeat forever. Later that week, Tom and I were working this commercial job with 8 units on a shopping center roof in direct sun. We were basically cooking ourselves alive up there. Halfway through the job, I got a text from Lucas with a screenshot of his NFT whatever, showing some temporary upward trend. See, it's working, the message said triumphantly. I ignored it but couldn't help remembering when we were kids and Lucas would cheat at board games. When caught, he'd cry until my parents let him redo his turn. Different rules always applied to him. This NFT thing felt like the same old pattern, just with higher stakes. Olivia started researching NFT scams that night. She showed me dozens of identical schemes that had already collapsed. It's always the same formula, she explained, scrolling through her laptop. Promise massive returns, create fake urgency, target desperate people, textbook stuff. I texted Lucas back telling him it was a scam. He responded with some technical jargon that made 0 sense. Classic Lucas move when cornered. Confuse people with big words. He used to pull that crap in high school debates, and teachers ate it up. 2 weeks later, Tom's cousin who works at a bank texted him about my parents. They were trying to take out a high-interest loan against their car. Word travels fast in small towns. They were apparently all in on Lucas's scheme, a last-ditch effort to recoup their losses. I emailed them links to articles about NFT scams, hoping they'd see reason. Dad replied with one word, noted. Translation, piss off, we're not listening. Another week passed. I was under some rich guy's deck fixing his pool house AC when my phone notifications blew up. Lucas's NFT investment had crashed. Surprise? Surprise? Shocker. Olivia met me for lunch afterward, and she asked if I was going to call my parents. I just shook my head. What was there to say? Told you so? That wouldn't help anyone. That night, I found myself scrolling through my parents' desperate texts. They'd lost everything. Savings, borrowed money, the works. They were being evicted the following week. Dad's health was supposedly declining from stress, and somehow they had decided this was all my fault, because I didn't stop them, because I didn't bail them out, because I wasn't a team player. The mental gymnastics would be impressive if they weren't so infuriating. And Lucas? He had disappeared completely, left some dramatic note about making things right and coming back when he fixes everything. Classic Lucas, running away but making it sound heroic. 3 weeks after the NFT disaster, my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment. I spotted their car from my window as I was getting ready for work. Perfect timing, as always. They followed me to my truck, practically ambushing me in the parking lot. Dad looked terrible. His face was gaunt, clothes wrinkled, a shadow of his former self. Mom was wearing her martyr face, that look how much I suffer expression designed to maximize guilt in anyone who saw it. Dad started in immediately about my responsibility to family while Mom nodded along. When I didn't immediately offer money, Dad's tone shifted from guilt-tripping to outright accusation. Suddenly, I was the villain in their story, the heartless son who abandoned his family in their time of need. They followed me all the way to my apartment door, getting louder and more desperate with each step. I let them in just to avoid making a scene for my neighbors. Big mistake. Inside, it got worse. Dad was shouting about how I could have prevented all this if I had just helped when they first asked. If I wasn't so jealous of Lucas. If I was a real son. Mom was crying those manipulative tears that never quite reached her eyes. "You could have prevented this," Dad yelled, jabbing a finger at me. "We're about to be homeless because you couldn't set aside your petty jealousy." "Jealousy?" I laughed. That was rich. 28 years of treating me like second-class family, I said calmly, and now I'm supposed to bail you out. "We gave you everything," Mom sobbed. "A roof over your head, food." "You gave Lucas everything," I interrupted. "I got the leftovers." Dad's face went red. "That's not true. We supported your little career." "My little career?" I repeated. "The one that has me debt-free while you're begging for handouts?" Then she dropped the bombshell about Dad's supposed heart condition. It was the first I'd heard of it, and it was conveniently timed for maximum guilt. I asked when he was diagnosed, and they exchanged that quick glance that always meant they were bullshitting. "When exactly was this heart condition diagnosed, Dad?" I pressed. "The doctor said," he stammered. "Which doctor? When?" I cut him off. That's when I'd had enough. I told them exactly what I thought about their parenting, their golden child worship, and their financial decisions. I told them they had made their choice when they bet everything on Lucas and his lies, again and again. They were on their own now. Their shocked faces almost made me waver. Almost. But I held my ground as they gathered their things and left. Mom's parting shot about me being no son of hers didn't hurt like she thought it would. It just confirmed what I'd always known. I changed my number the next day, installed a security camera, and warned my building manager about them. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty about cutting contact. Tom thinks I'm being too harsh with my parents. His family's tight, so he can't imagine cutting them off. That's an easy perspective to have when your family actually gives a damn about you. "Just meet them for coffee," he suggested while we were restocking the van. Neutral ground, public place. They can't make a scene. Clearly, he's never seen my mother's public meltdowns. The woman could win an Oscar for her performances. A week later, I got a certified letter from my dad. I skimmed through it, more guilt-tripping, vague health concerns, and finally the real point. They needed $5,000 for first and last month's rent on a new place. I marked it "Return to Sender" and dropped it back in the mail unopened. Work kept me busy, thankfully. Olivia had been dropping hints about moving in officially, which made sense since she was there most nights anyway. We started looking at bigger apartments, maybe even houses. I never thought I'd be in a position to buy property, but HVAC pays better than my family ever acknowledged. I got a weird call from my Aunt Mom's sister. She was fed up with my parents staying with her. Apparently, they'd turned her guest room into command central for what she called Operation Guilt Nathan. She said they even had a spreadsheet of manipulation tactics. My aunt thought it was ridiculous, hence the call. I've always liked her. Tom's baby was keeping him up all night. He showed up to work like a zombie most days, but still insisted it was worth it. "You should try it, man," he said through a massive yawn. "Being a dad changes everything." "Hard pass for now, thanks." A month after what I'd come to think of as the showdown, my parents escalated their tactics. They started contacting my employer, claiming I was stealing from them. They called my boss 7 times. 7. But he knows me too well to believe it. He just gave me a heads up about the situation. They tried Olivia's school next, leaving messages about me being unstable. The principal was confused, but supportive. Their desperation was reaching new heights. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years, they treated me like the unreliable one, and now they were the ones pulling unhinged stunts. Olivia suggested getting a restraining order. It seemed extreme, but their behavior was getting increasingly unpredictable. I kept the paperwork ready just in case. Meanwhile, there was no word from Lucas. He had vanished completely. 6 weeks after the NFT collapse, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Lucas calling from Nevada of all places. He claimed he was working construction, if you can believe it. LOL, the golden child laying bricks and pouring concrete. Karma's a beautiful thing sometimes. He said the construction work was humbling, and he was learning the value of honest labor. I wanted to laugh at the irony, but honestly, I just felt tired of the whole situation. I remember Lucas mocking my career choice for years. "Manual labor is for people who can't think for a living," he once said at Thanksgiving dinner. Now he was supposedly lugging bricks in the Nevada heat. Funny how life works out. Olivia thinks his construction story is BS. People like him don't change that fundamentally, she said when I told her about the call. She might be right, but the mental image of Lucas with a hard hat and blisters is too satisfying to question. Life settled into a rhythm without my family drama. Work, home, Olivia, occasional beers with Tom. It was peaceful. I started thinking about the future in a way I never could before. Career growth, relationship goals, maybe even my own business someday. Then, just when things were calm, my doorbell rang one Tuesday evening. It was Lucas in person this time, looking even worse than before if that was possible. Lucas stood in my doorway looking like absolute hell. He was thinner, older, with none of that cocky swagger left. Olivia gave me a look and headed to the kitchen to give us space. I let him in, and he shuffled around awkwardly, his eyes taking in our apartment. Nothing fancy but comfortable, and paid for. And he looked like a ghost of himself. Worn jeans, faded tee, thinning hair with some gray in it. It was hard to believe this was the same guy who once made fun of my Target clearance rack wardrobe. He launched into his Nevada construction story, claiming he'd been hauling concrete and installing drywall for minimum wage. He said his foreman was a hard-ass who made him redo everything 3 times. He described blisters, sunburns, and exhaustion in vivid detail. "You should see my hands," he said, shoving his palms in my face. "I've got calluses on my calluses." "Wow, you want a medal for doing what millions of people do every day?" I replied. "Should I throw a parade because you discovered manual labor exists?" "Bet you never thought you'd see me doing construction, huh?" he asked with a self-deprecating laugh. "Actually, I never thought about you at all," I replied. His face fell just enough to be satisfying. I couldn't help but enjoy the irony. The same guy who once said HVAC is for people who couldn't hack it in the real world was now learning just how hard physical work actually is. When he showed me his calloused hands like they were war wounds, I nearly laughed out loud. Welcome to my world, buddy. World. I remembered sophomore year of high school when Lucas told everyone my HVAC career goal was because I wasn't smart enough for college. Now Mr. Tech School dropout was discovering that physical labor isn't the easy option he thought it was. He eventually got to the real point. Our parents were worse off than ever. Our aunt had kicked them out. Dad's health actually was deteriorating, heart problems from stress. They were living in some sketchy motel, barely making rent from Dad's disability checks. I felt that familiar twinge of guilt, then remembered all the years of being treated like the family failure. I remembered Dad laughing when I explained how certification works in HVAC. "So they give you a gold star for changing filters correctly?" he'd said. He would never have dared say that to Lucas about his startup plans. Lucas claimed he was sending what little he made to them, but it wasn't enough. He said they had asked him to talk to me because they were desperate. No surprise there. They'd always use Lucas as their ambassador when they wanted something. "They don't know I'm here," he admitted, staring at the floor. I had to see for myself if you were doing okay." "Right, because you've always been so concerned about my well-being," I scoffed. "Definitely not because you need something." "And came to ask for money," I added flatly. He winced at that. "Not directly. I mean, they need help, but I'm not just here for that." "Aren't you, though?" I challenged. The look on his face was priceless, like I'd gone off script from whatever conversation he had rehearsed on the way over. The conversation shifted when Lucas admitted something unexpected. He said he was always jealous of me. He claimed I had something real, actual skills, a clear path, confidence in my abilities, while he was faking everything, terrified of being exposed as a fraud. Olivia brought drinks and stayed for a few minutes to assess the situation, then tactfully disappeared to take a shower. Lucas watched her leave and commented on how nice she seemed. At least he got that right. He made his pitch. He wasn't asking me to forgive them or him, just to help our parents with a place to stay. He said they'd changed, that losing everything had humbled them. "They talk about you differently now," he said. "Dad especially. He mentions your job like it's something to be proud of. Amazing how bankruptcy suddenly makes my career respectable. Financial rock bottom is one hell of a perspective shifter." "That's convenient timing," I said. Years of mockery, then suddenly I'm worth respecting when they need cash. Lucas sighed. "I deserve that, we all do, but they're still our parents. Biology doesn't entitle them to anything, but I told him I'd think about it. It was all I could offer right now." He accepted this, looking relieved to not get an outright no, and handed me their motel info and his new number before leaving. I spent the week thinking about it. Meanwhile, work kept me grounded. Tom had his own drama, the baby had colic, and no one in his house was sleeping. He showed up with his shirt on inside out and didn't notice until lunchtime. Still, he said it was worth it though. "Hardest job I've ever loved," he claimed through a massive yawn. Olivia had been researching resources for seniors in crisis. She didn't push me either way, just provided information. "Whatever you decide," she said, "do it on your terms, not theirs." Smart woman. So I made my decision a week later. I didn't call Lucas or my parents. Instead, I contacted a social worker in their area. I explained the situation and arranged assistance with housing applications, medical resources for Dad, and job placement services for Mom. I paid 3 months' rent on a basic apartment near the hospital. What I didn't do was give them my address or invite them back into my life. Some bridges stay burned, and that's fine. Lucas texted his thanks, a surprisingly humble reply. I simply did it my way this time. They needed to stand on their own feet. Life moved forward. Olivia and I got engaged, nothing fancy, just dinner at her favorite restaurant and a simple ring I had saved for. She cried happy tears and said yes immediately. Her family was thrilled. They actually like me. Weird concept. The big change came when my boss retired. He offered to sell me his client list and equipment at a reasonable price. It was a terrifying prospect, but exciting too. Olivia crunched the numbers and said it made financial sense. I took the plunge and started Cold Front Solutions. The first few months of business ownership were a nightmare, but slowly things improved. I landed a major contract with an office complex and hired 3 solid techs who actually showed up on time and knew what they were doing. Tom came to work for me, bringing his expertise in client relationships. The business started to stabilize. The funniest HVAC call of my career happened during this time. I got an emergency request from this fancy country club. Their system was down during a major event. When I arrived, I spotted Lucas there, wearing a catering staff uniform, sweating bullets in the kitchen heat. He didn't see me. I just watched him for a minute, carrying trays and being ordered around by the chef. From tech startup golden boy to server in 6 months. I fixed the AC and left without saying hello. Some things are better left unacknowledged. My parents were doing okay from what I heard. Dad's health improved once they had stable housing. Mom found work at a library. They sent birthday cards through Olivia's email. She's my unofficial family buffer now. We bought a house near Olivia's school, 3 bedrooms, decent yard, good neighborhood. As I was installing a top-of-the-line HVAC system, perks of the job, I couldn't help thinking about how far I'd come. Lucas was still in Nevada, doing construction. He seemed to have made peace with it and sent occasional updates, always respectful of my boundaries. His last message included a photo of him and his crew finishing a wall. The guy actually looked proud of physical labor. I never thought I'd see the day. Maybe someday we'll have a real relationship again. Maybe not. For the first time in my life, that decision is entirely mine to make, and that's the real victory here, not watching them fall, but finally standing on my own. Some might call it petty to enjoy the reversal of fortunes. Maybe it is. But after being the family joke for so long, it's pretty damn satisfying to be the only one with my shit together. The HVAC guy they mocked now runs a growing business, while the tech genius who couldn't shut up about his investment portfolio sweats his ass off hauling concrete for some foreman who treats him like dirt. Life's weird like that sometimes. The best revenge isn't some dramatic showdown. It's just living well and letting reality do the work for you. Edit. Thanks for all the awards and comments. Really appreciate it all. For those asking, yes, Olivia knows I posted this. She's reading your comments and laughing her ass off at the ones roasting Lucas. And no, I'm not giving out my business info, even though some of you weirdly want me to fix your AC. Edit 2. Stop asking if Olivia has a sister. She doesn't. And even if she did, I wouldn't set you guys up with her LMAO. But seriously, thanks for all the support. Didn't expect so many people to relate to this.